It was quite strange at the beginning because I'd actually found a little crease in the skin, gone to the GP who referred me down to the hospital. So of course I went down, it wasn't like a regular mammogram where somebody's picked it up totally unaware. There was a sense that there was something wrong, and actually at the tests down at the hospital they said they were pretty certain that it was a tumour at the time, so I knew there and then that something was wrong. And I think it was more a case of shock rather than anything else. You know, I wasn't sort of distraught by it, you know. And then you think, well, if anything happened to me, what was going to happen to my husband? You know, how was he going to cope? How was my son going to cope? It was all other people. It's crazy, really. You don't think about yourself. You sort of start thinking about everyone else. How are they going to cope if I'm not here? You know, my husband can't set the DVD, you know. I mean, how's he going to deal with it if I'm not here, you know? So I think that's the difficult thing, you know. And also there are thoughts that my son's not married yet, you know, and I thought, well, I'm never going to see grandchildren, you know, which I'd love to have. But 3 weeks after I'd had the biopsy, I had an appointment for surgery. I didn't have a full mastectomy, I had a partial mastectomy, which sort of took from the centre of the breast down to the breastbone. So I was left with quite a strange shape. But basically the reconstructive surgery that was offered was either an implant, which I couldn't have because I'd had radiotherapy, or taking muscle, I believe it is, from the back and pulling it round and sort of rebuilding you, really. But I'd seen people that had had that done, and it looked incredibly painful and a long recovery. And it can also have problems, cause you problems using muscles. And I play golf, so the last thing I wanted was my swing sort of damaging with the reconstructive surgery. And I thought for a small reconstruction, relatively small reconstruction, it seemed an awful lot to go through that might cause more problems than I've got to start with. You know, for something that's cosmetic, I didn't want to actually have muscle problems afterwards. So I just left it and thought, there's nothing I can do. And one of the breast care nurses mentioned to me, part way through my chemotherapy, I think it was, that Mr. Conji down at Singleton was looking at doing this fat implant surgery, and that would be ideal for me because of the shape of the surgery, that the shape had been left by the surgery. I didn't know how on earth I could actually get over this and actually get clothes to fit again. And she said this would be ideal. She said basically it's just like pumping it in and blowing a balloon up, you know. So I thought that sounds brilliant. So I thought, yep, I'll go for that. I went down to the operating theatre. I was given a general anaesthetic, and they took the fat from my thighs, from each leg. Normal, presume, I mean obviously I don't know what goes on, but presumably sort of normal liposuction processes. And then I went back to the ward, came round from the anaesthetic, and then I was taken down again and given a local anaesthetic and had the fat injected into the breast. Now the process at the time, obviously, part of it's under a general anaesthetic, so that's not painful. What was painful was the recovery from the liposuction in the legs. It's very sore for the first 5 or 6 weeks, whilst the actual wounds heal up over the legs, and I assume that muscles have had a bit of a bashing and things. And whilst the fat was being injected, I know that the consultant, Mr. Conji, actually worked on the scar to try and stretch it off, soften it off a bit. And I have noticed a huge difference now, that it's much flatter, much softer. You don't feel a ridge now where the scar was originally. So that's been a big plus. It's never going to look totally natural, but it looks a lot more natural than it did before. Yeah, it's just like a scar that you would see if you've been just had a cut or something and it's healed over, rather than a great big ridge as it was before. The end result's fantastic. I mean, I think if I walked down the street now, you know, and somebody looked at me, nobody would ever know that I'd had breast cancer surgery.